welcome to my first fanfiction reading, Sofia the First Princess Who by Sofia 2017 Planning, co-written with Genie345. I'm sorry if I sound a little tired because I read it once and then I lost the recording. Okay, let's start. Chapter 1: The Accident. One cool summer day in the kingdom of Enchantia, Cedric the royal sorcerer was walking through the castle with a small sack in his hand. He was bringing the small sack back into his workroom, but then he passed by the dining room and spotted the royal family having lunch. As always, King Roland II sat at the head of the table and his wife, Queen Miranda, sat at his right. His children, James, Amber, and Sofia, sat at his left in order by age. The moment he passed the dining room, delicious and savory aromas entered his nose and his mouth began to water. Then Cedric's stomach growled, demanding him that he give it food. "I suppose a little lunch first won't hurt," he said to himself, and he walked in the dining room, where the servants were setting the plates of food on the table. "Excuse me, but could I get a plate of lunch to go?" he asked Violet, one of the maids. "Of course, Cedric," said Violet, with a respectful bow to the middle-aged sorcerer. "Hello, Cedric," said Roland, with a nod in his direction. "Your Majesties," said Cedric, setting the sack down on the table to return a bow to the king. "What's that, Mr. Cedric?" asked Sofia, putting her fork down to look at the sorcerer and his mysterious brown sack. She eyed the sack with curious fascination. "This is forget-me-dust," he said as he waited for his lunch. "Forget-me-dust?" asked Amber, now eyeing the sack with the same young curiosity, except, unlike Sofia's gentle curiosity, Amber's was bored curiosity. Yes, you sprinkle it on someone and they forget things," Cedric explained, already tired of this conversation between the two princesses. "Oh, let me try some," said James eagerly and trying to reach for the bag. Cedric quickly pulled the dust away from him. No, this dust is very powerful." Suddenly, while Violet was bringing Cedric a doggy bag with his lunch in it, James's dog Rex came running into the room with the royal steward, Bailiwick, behind the energized dog. The big brown dog began to wiggle and jump everywhere, barking loud for food and treats to be thrown his way. "Rex, come back here! I'm so sorry, Your Majesty, he got loose!" exclaimed Bailiwick as he tried to grab at the dog's leash, embarrassed that he and the dog disrupted the king and his family's quiet lunch. Rex ran toward the table and bumped the leg of it, causing the bag of forget-me-dust to tumble off of the table, when Cedric managed to catch it, but the hyper dog then knocked into Cedric and making him fall to the ground as he watched the bag toss further into the air. And to his horror, the whole bag was aimed right at Sofia. The bag moved through the air like it was in slow motion, and it made its way towards Sofia. The whole room was frozen, and the only thing they could do was watch it as it spilled forget-me-dust all over the young princess. The royal family stood with their mouth hanging open as Bailiwick still tried to get a hold of the crazy dog. Cedric remained on the floor too stunned to move. Sofia blinked a few times and the room began to spin. "I feel funny," she said, oozily. Sofia then fell out of her chair and lied on the floor unconscious. "Sofia!" everyone in the room cried as they saw the young princess lying motionless on the floor. Chapter 2: I'm a Princess? "Sofia!" everyone in the room cried as they saw the young princess lying motionless on the floor. Everyone rushed to the princess's side. Next, the king had her in his arms, and the queen and Sofia's siblings kneeled beside him. Lowering his ear to her, the king managed to hear her soft breathing, and relief filled his heart. "She's breathing," the king exclaimed, looking to his queen to reassure her. "But why is she still asleep?" she asked, looking more worried by the minute. "Is she going to be okay?" James asked. Cedric? The king and queen said together, fear and concern for their daughter ached on their faces. I, he began, unsure of what to say to the king and queen. I don't know, your majesties. She needs to be awake for me to see if she'll be okay. Let's put her in her room for now and let her wake up on her own, Bailiwick offered, still reeling around with the hyperactive dog. All right, said King Roland, standing with Sophia in his arms and walking towards her room. All day and throughout the night, Sophia's family checked in every hour to see if she has awakened or not, and well past midnight, Bailiwick offered to stand watch over Sophia so that the tired king and his family can return back to their rooms and get some rest. The next morning, Sophia's eyes slowly fluttered open. She simply lay there, feeling a small headache at the top of her head. Gently, she rubbed her temples as she sat up and stretched, looking around her. Sophia was confused as to why she was laying in a big canopy bed in a very fancy-looking room. Where am I? She thought to herself as she took in her surroundings. Out of the corner of her eye, Sophia was surprised to find a man sleeping uncomfortably in the little chair beside her bed. Sir? She asked, unsure if she should wake him. Bailiwick woke up with a start and almost fell out of his chair. But when he looked at her, he quickly relaxed and stood up, smoothing out his suit. Princess Sophia, he exclaimed, you are awake. I must tell your parents. And he promptly left the room, leaving Sophia even more confused. My parents? Asked Sophia. That couldn't be right. She only had a mom. Alone, Sophia was unsure if she should just go look for her mom herself or wait until the mysterious man returns. Soon, Roland, Miranda, Amber, James, and Cedric came into the room with Bailiwick behind them. The moment they entered the room and saw that she was awake, relief filled their eyes and they rushed to her side. Oh, Sophia, said Miranda, the first to reach her, and pulling her daughter into a tight hug. You are all right? We were so worried, said Roland, the next one to hug her. I'm all right, said Sophia, confused by all of the activity and people around her. Are you sure, Princess Sophia? Asked Bailiwick. Yes, but I have a question, said Sophia. What is it? Asked Miranda, gently smiling at her. Why did you call me princess? Asked Sophia. The moment those words left Sophia's mouth, everything in the room went silent. No one said a word as shock and disbelief crossed their faces. Everyone looked to the king for answers, who in turn just looked at Cedric. Bravely, James was the first to speak as he slowly approached his little sister. Because you are a princess, said James, softly patting her hand. No, I'm not. I'm just a girl who lives in the village, answered Sophia firmly. She was confused as to why the Prince of Enchantia was here with her and patting her hand. Merlin's mushrooms. The forget-me-dust must have erased Sophia's memories of ever becoming a princess, whispered Cedric. Sophia, what do you remember? Asked Miranda, sitting down on the bed beside her as new concern filled the bottom of her stomach. Well, Mom, all I remember is coming to the castle to give King Roland a new pair of slippers. Speaking of which, we already dropped them off, so why are we still here, and why are we in these fancy clothes? Said Sophia, holding up the skirt of her purple princess dress. Sophia, don't you remember how your mom and I got married? Asked Roland uneasily. Your Majesty, I think I will remember my mom marrying the king, said Sophia with a tiny giggle. She then got down from the bed. Everyone just stood there and watched speechlessly as Sophia walked towards the door, unsure of what to do. Well, it's nice seeing the castle, but I have a Buttercup's meeting at Ruby's house and I don't want to be late. Come on, Mom, Sophia said by the door before leaving. What now? She doesn't remember anything about becoming a princess. She still thinks she's just a girl from the village, Amber said in dismay as she looked at the door Sophia just left in. Cedric, does the dust wear off? Asked Roland quickly as he looked at the sorcerer for any possible answer to saving his youngest daughter. It does, but different amounts take different times to wear off. Let's see, he said, looking through his book. A pinch a few minutes, a dash a couple hours, a teaspoon a few days, a tablespoon a few weeks, a whole bag. Oh no, he said with fear clear all over his face. What's wrong? Asked Miranda quickly, walking closer to the sorcerer. A whole bag of forget-me-dust takes 10 years to wear off, he said as he looked at everyone. 10 years? Everyone exclaimed. What should we do? Amber asked what everyone in the room was thinking. Well, Queen Miranda, maybe you should just go back to the village with Sophia and I'll stay here and try to make an antidote, suggested Cedric. Miranda looked at her husband and stepchildren, unsure of what exactly to do. Roland then stepped towards her and took her hand, slightly squeezing it as if to reassure her without having to say anything. Well, if it'll help, I suppose, said Miranda. Then Sophia came back into the room with her necklace in her hand, walking towards Amber. Sophia politely placed the amulet in her hands with a smile. Oh, Princess Amber, I realized I was wearing this amulet. It must be yours. Here you go, said Sophia. But, Sophia, Amber started to say, but was unable to finish her sentence as she did not know what exactly to say to her amnesiac sister. Mom, are you almost ready to go? Asked Sophia, looking up at her mother. Sure, let's go, said Miranda with a weak smile. As Bailiwick escorted the two out, Miranda looked back at her husband and two children as she held Sophia's hand. Just before entering the carriage, Bailiwick had called for them. Miranda quickly hugged her husband and two children lovingly, not wanting to let them go. And once the carriage was in the air, Roland, Amber, and James stood below and looked sadly at the disappearing carriage. Hopefully, their queen and princess would return soon. This is the end of chapter 1 and 2 of Sofia the First Princess Who. Thank you. Bye. Yes, you sprinkle it on someone and they forget things. Cedric Yes, you sprinkle it on someone and they forget things. Cedric